Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce this afternoon's plenary speaker, Brother Ernest Miller, F.S.C. His project is bearing witness within the reign of God, a summons to discipleship. Brother Ernest Miller serves as the director of the Adrien Nyel project in the Office of Mission and Ministry for the Brothers of the Christian Schools, District of Eastern North America. The Adrien Nyel project is a new initiative that seeks to engage young adults to promote the vocation of teacher and invite them on a journey to discover the Lasallian charism and heritage. It is also a renewed commitment to the formation and accompaniment of young Lasallian teachers. The initiative is inspired by the relationship of Adrien Nyel and Jean-Baptiste de La Salle, who first met on the doorstep of the convent of the Sisters of the Child of Jesus in Rennes. The Adrien Nyel project that Brother Ernest leads is relatively new. Previously, Brother Ernest served as the Vice President for Mission, Diversity, and Inclusion at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. Brother Ernest led the university's work to ensure that the school is deepening the knowledge and understanding of the Lasallian charism and mission for today's educational and spiritual needs. In addition, Brother Ernest worked with students inside and outside the classroom to grasp the long arc of the Lasallian story and vision. Brother Ernest holds a doctorate of ministry from the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, and he is a member of the Institute of the Brothers of Christian Schools, the institute that founds and sponsors his university, LaSalle. He joined the brothers in 1993 in Philadelphia to begin his initial formation. In 1998, he made his first profession of vows, and in 2003, he made his final profession of vows. He is the product of the Lasallian formation, although he will tell you that it was the Brothers of Holy Cross who gave birth to his vocation as a brother. Brother Ernest is a graduate of Holy Cross High School in New Orleans, and we are delighted to welcome him home as one of the family here at Convocation 2023. Brother Ernest.
It is a blessing to be here this afternoon, sort of as an outlier, but hopefully as a family member. So giving glory and honor to Almighty God. I want to take this opportunity to give thanks for the work of the Holy Cross Institute, supporting Holy Cross educators to grow as a community, striving to achieve Blessed Basile Moreau's vision of becoming a powerful lever with which to move, direct, and sanctify the world. The Holy Cross Institute is a lever itself, ensuring that educators in the Holy Cross family not only understand the congregation's history, but also raising the spiritual questions of what it means to educate in faith and in justice, and to achieve human flourishing and human freedom in our times. So I have chosen this title of bearing witness within the reign of God. Brother Paul has already keynoted us into meditating on the reign of God. But it is a reminder to us that it is the reign of God that is our mission, creating, building, achieving the reign of God here and now. And for me, I recall often when I think of this notion of within the reign of God, the parable of the net, that we're already caught in the net. Right? And then the subtitle, A Summons to Discipleship. I've been invited to try to address the subject of co-responsibility for mission. how we all bear responsibility for mission, irrespective of what our position is in the ministry. From groundskeeper to president, everyone has responsibility for mission. And as we get into our sort of meditation this afternoon, I am wanting to refer to co-responsibility really as a call to discipleship, right? And I'll sort of try to break that open as we move forward. But let me begin with a bit of a personal prologue. I would not be here. I would not be standing here without the educational and the spiritual care of the Holy Cross family. In particular, St. Rita's School in New Orleans, where I studied from 1st to 6th grade. St. Rita's from its beginning to, sadly, its end this past academic year, conducted by the Maronite Sisters of Holy Cross. And then 6 years at the Holy Cross School in New Orleans. If I'm not mistaken, the second oldest Holy Cross institution in these states, second only to the University of Notre Dame, conducted by the Brothers of Holy Cross. And indeed, I lift up all the educators with the Maronite Sisters and with the Brothers of Holy Cross, who together accompanied me in varied ways to gravitate towards God. Allow me to give thanksgiving for 4 Holy Cross religious, among others, who are integral witnesses to the consecrated life for me and for what it means to be a brother educator. Sister Juanita Wood, F.S.C, my 3rd grade teacher. Sister Winifred Cunniffe, F.S.C, Eternal Rest, my principal. Brother John T. McLaughlin, CSC, Eternal Rest, my first headmaster at the Cross, my 10th grade mathematics teacher, and my sponsor into the Roman Catholic Communion. Yes, in 8th grade, I made what I called a lateral move. A lateral move from the United Methodist Communion to the Roman Catholic Communion. And then Brother Roy Smith, CSC, Midwest Province of Brothers. And I came to know of Brother Roy, thanks to Brother John. Brother John said that there is an African-American Holy Cross brother up in South Bend who at the time was the director of personnel. And while I was a student at Holy Cross, came to first meet Brother Roy and has, in all these years, had great friendship and brotherhood. So before we get into the heart of my time with you this afternoon, I invite you to take a moment, a quiet moment, to identify 1 or 2 persons in your own story who is a witness bearer for you. Take a moment. Over the course of our time this afternoon, I'm going to have 3 movements. First, a little text and context of discipleship as embedded, as rooted in the Word. Second, to focus on story and structures of our Lasallian mission field and co-responsibility. That is, I will share 4 examples of how various Lasallian structures constitutes our struggle to engage in co-responsibility for mission. And then third, some concluding thoughts. So that's our movement. So I invite you, sisters and brothers, to reflect with me on the theme, bearing witness within the reign of God, a summons to discipleship. I contend that discipleship coheres with, indeed binds, co-responsibility for education in faith and education in justice. If a Holy Cross education is to prepare those entrusted to your care to be useful citizens for society and beyond, in the words of Basile Moreau, for better times than ours, then education in faith and in justice is paramount. The Mexican Jesuit martyr, Blessed Miguel Pro, instructs, we proclaim principles of the church, the reign of love, without forgetting that it is also a reign of justice. God's word, both the prophetic Hebrew literature and the gospel of Jesus, permeates the various levels of life for a faith community: personal, historical, communal. To situate our time, I aim to draw attention primarily to the communal, today's lived realities, with the historical as backstory or prologue as experience within the Lasallian field of mission. To illuminate our lived reality, I will offer specific examples of how we strive to exercise co-responsibility. To push forward, let me begin with a reflection on how the grammar of discipleship, mission, and the reign of God speaks to us. In Letters and Papers from Prison, Dietrich Bonhoeffer's question to his friend, Swiss pastor and theologian Erwin Sutz, what does it mean to follow Christ, is the essential question of Christian discipleship. As theologian Brant Himes observes, for Bonhoeffer, this central orientation to discipleship is the question of what ought to be going on in the life of a Christian and in the life of the church. Bonhoeffer's concern with discipleship finds ground in the synoptic gospels. These biblical texts include accounts of Jesus's mission with dramatic calls to discipleship. Without preparation or even conversation, Jesus summons the unsuspecting company of brothers to follow him and to join him in his mission of fishing for people to come into the net, which is to say, God's reign. The story of the 12 apostles, the story of their call to mission, is told with disarming simplicity, but carries the power of instruction and challenge for those within the net who feel the tug of the invitation to bear co-responsibility for mission. This Christian story becomes our story. Progressively, God proposes a new story, a future story that invites us to step out of our past. Reflecting on Jesus's summons of the 12, we can see that the gospel gives us a new story, which enables us to fulfill the ministry of Jesus. That is, creating the reign of God in our time. Thinking deeply, we're reminded that Basile Moreau, John Baptist de La Salle, as well as other foundresses and founders, caught this Christian story as manifested in their great gospel ideas that provide the sedimentation for our evangelical activity today. They moved from a personal charism to communally lived spiritualities. How is Holy Cross spirituality informing and shaping the Holy Cross mission field? Under the Apostle Paul's guidance, he calls you to attention, as he does the Christians in the church at Corinth. Holy Cross educators are called to draw on the mysterious wisdom of the cross. During a meeting of the Union of Superiors General in Rome in the Jubilee year 2000, Assumptionist Superior General Claude Maracal articulated ways our founders and foundresses' great gospel ideas have been taken up by people like you, inspired by them. These gospel ideas have given individual Christians, as well as persons of other faith traditions and of no faith tradition, a story to join, a community to which to belong, a work to do, a way to pray, a face of God to see. Again, we heard that articulated in the Brother Superior General's morning presentation. A community to which to belong, a work to do, a way to pray, and a face of God to see. What the Assumptionist Superior General articulates is how the charism of a founder or foundress grows as a story to become a distinctive way of Christian discipleship and a recognized place in sharing in God's mission. While a lot can be learned about co-responsibility from so-called secular sources, our own spiritual resources can also be a guide for us, particularly the portrayal of the church and its leadership in the New Testament. This Holy Cross Convocation's attention to co-responsibility and mission is salutary and certainly part of the deepest convictions of the New Testament. As biblical theologian, the Reverend Don Senior CP, a Passionist, puts it, turning to our scriptures is not to be an exercise of romantic nostalgia, but to find the inspiration and energy to face the present. So let us pause for a moment. And I invite you, sisters and brothers, to ask yourself at this point, what have you heard? What have you seen? If you want to just make a mental note, or if you are scribbling on a pad or on an iPad, what have you heard and what have you seen as we conclude movement one? As we've sought to look at the grammar of discipleship, mission, and the reign of God. Take a moment. I want you to be thinking about, indeed meditating on, again, the high thoughts that Brother Paul has already offered us, particularly breaking open the practical, on-the-ground realities of the Holy Cross mission field, and joining that with this focus on the grammar of discipleship, mission, and the reign of God. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? So with that, let us move to our second movement. Since its origins, John Baptist de La Salle's spiritual family has experienced co-responsibility for mission. We call it association. For the brothers of the Christian schools, it is the founding vow. So before the institutional church, before the Holy See imposed upon our institute, that our brothers had to formally pronounce the three traditional vows of religion: poverty, chastity, and obedience. The brothers took the vows of association, obedience, and stability. And so today we take 5 vows, pronounce 5 vows. And in 2000, as a result of the General Chapter of 2000, we then petitioned the Holy See to allow us to change the flow of the vow formula to where the founding vow of association is first. I'm going to come back to association as we move along and at the end in the concluding thoughts. Association plays a central role in Lasallian thought and action. Indeed, it is a constitutive element of Lasallian identity. Today, it has developed in unimaginable, unprecedented ways during the post-Vatican II era. As our Institute Circular 461 states, the immediate and ultimate goal of all Lasallian association is our educational and evangelical mission. It implies a process, a spiritual path that takes one where he or she might never have chosen to go. That includes John Baptist de La Salle himself. The foundation events for Lasallian association occur in 1691 and 1694. First, in the 1691, what we call today the heroic vow, and you're seeing an image of what we call the heroic vow here on the screen. The heroic vow of de La Salle and 2 brothers proclaimed they would live on bread and water alone to keep the fledgling community and the schools alive. Then, more definitively, the 1694 vow of association of 12 brothers and de La Salle becomes the prototypical expression of apostolic energy and spiritual motivation for every type of Lasallian association. Today, this heritage enables brothers and Lasallian partners, together and by association, to strive to sustain this profound dynamic when association and shared mission are no longer abstractions, but our lived reality. We arrive to the current moment because of a progressive movement of our institute, listening to the Spirit and reading the signs of the times. This progressive movement gains traction with the 41st General Chapter, 1986, which introduces the nomenclature Lasallian family and calls for fostering Christian educators writ large. The 42nd General Chapter, 1993, introduces shared mission and Lasallian partners, recognizing the different vocations within the community of Lasallian educators. So before identifying specific structures of co-responsibility as exercised in a Lasallian key, I want to invite you to take a look at the Lasallian geographic landscape. It is this snapshot that is going to help us understand, help us to grasp why we have certain structures. But again, before I offer those slides, I want to say again that we don't arrive ever imperfectly, ever incompletely, where we are today with various structures overnight. It's been a progressive movement to creating these and other structures. So this is the Lasallian map today. John Baptist de La Salle never left France. He did desire to get to Rome, but he never made it to Rome. He sent two brothers to identify ourselves to the Holy See. They opened a papal school to say, hey, there's this fledgling little community of all brothers that have arrived on the scene. And so from France to now 80 countries in the world. Once upon a time, the brothers were in as many as 90 plus countries in the world, but still an impressive footprint on 6 continents. And what you're looking at here in the different colors are our 5 regions. So the Institute is divided into 5 regions. The regions exist only for purposes of collaboration and coordination, right? The main vehicle are our districts. What we call our provinces officially districts. And so Rilon is where we are. That is the Lasallian region of North America. And I think you can make out the others. To the far right is PARC, which is Pacific Asia. It's quite a large geographic space. Sub-Saharan Africa in the red on the mother continent. And then in the sort of baby blue is RELEM, which is Europe and the Mediterranean, including North Africa and Western Asia, which is typically wrongly called the Middle East. And then, of course, Latin America in the orange. And then this will also explain why we have some of the structures we have. There are over 1 million students in Lasallian institutions around the world. There are over 1,100 schools, universities, and other centers of education. There are about 3,000 of us, and there's over 103,000 Lasallian partners. This is why we need the structures that we have. So again, a caveat. It is not my role to say that Holy Cross is to adopt these structures, right? I think part of the call here is one to share because we're all in the reign of God work, but perhaps to inspire you for your mission field, to continue to debate and discern what are the continuing structures, what is the movement that Holy Cross needs and desires. To just take one closer look to the Lasallian region of North America. So that is the United States and Canada. Puerto Rico, of course, as a commonwealth of the states. Puerto Rico just moved into our Lasallian district of Eastern North America, to which I belong. It used to belong to the District of the Antilles, South Mexico, until a year ago. And so this is where we are. These are our 4 districts in the North American region. And you can see all the states and territories in which we find ourselves. English-speaking Canada, which is Ontario for us, is part of our District of Eastern North America. We have a 6 through 12 school in Toronto and a community of retired brothers also in Toronto. So I'm going to talk about 4 structures of co-responsibility, or to use our term, association. First, I'm going to talk about district mission councils. Second, I'm going to talk about the IMEL, which is our International Mission Assembly. Third, I'm going to talk about the LEC, which is a Rilon structure. And then fourth, I'm going to talk about a more recent creation, CML. Okay. So let's go to the district mission councils. The 43rd General Chapter, which took place in 2007, mandated the creation of a structure responsible for the Lasallian educational mission in each of the districts, in which all brothers and Lasallian partners participate with a deliberative vote. Most districts today have a mission council. But I'm here to say that there are still districts, particularly in the global South, that do not yet have mission councils as such. They've been dragging their feet. And part of the issue is that there's still areas of the Institute where they're of the mind that the brothers make the decisions, period. No matter how many we are, the brothers make the decisions. I think the most recent general chapter, of which I was a capitulant in May, is speaking to that reality. But mission councils. Here in the US, each of our districts have a well-heeled, for the most part, one district I might pull out of well-heeled, but that's for a little hot chocolate after liturgy, in which brothers and partners share in decision-making regarding mission questions. And thus it allows what we call the district council or the provincial council to focus more on brother issues. Now, that does not mean that the district council is totally removed from mission-related questions, because by canon law, the district council has to weigh in on certain matters, right? But mission councils. Second, IML. The 43rd General Chapter also mandated the establishment of the International Assembly for the Lasallian Educational Mission, or IML. The first was in 2007. Usually, the International Mission Assembly convenes a year ahead of a general chapter, right? A general chapter, primarily a brother structure. IML is an association structure. That is, it is comprised of 1/3 brothers and 2/3 partners. Its deliberations are sent to the general chapter for affirmation, because the chapter constitutes the canonical body. Most recently, because of the pandemic, our general chapter was moved back a year. And so the IML met in two parts: a session prior to the general chapter, and then most recently in November, its second session. So IML, the International Mission Assembly. A third example is the Lasallian Education Council, or LEC, which is an innovative structure for sharing responsibility for the mission within our Lasallian region of North America. The LEC is responsible for the oversight of mission education formation programs and the growth of mission-related activities in the region. The LEC superintends Christian Brothers Conference, which is our regional office in Washington, D.C. The LEC is largely comprised of 2/3 Lasallian partners and 1/3 brothers. The executive director of Christian Brothers Conference is a Lasallian partner, and the LEC reports to the RCCB. The RCCB is the conference of the brothers visitors, or the provincials. So the LEC, a new innovative structure that now is really beginning to find its way. As I said at the beginning, nothing is complete and nothing is perfect. The fourth example. And then I certainly, during our Q&A, invite particular questions about these structures. The International Council for the Lasallian Association and the Educational Mission, CML. CML is a creature created by the General Chapter of 2014. It is a deliberative, collaborative body of 1/3 brothers and 2/3 partners, established for the animation and the direction of the mission of Lasallian education and evangelization across the Institute, across the Lasallian world. The Brother Superior General and his council makes the final appointments after a selection process of candidates. A final note from the GC 46, which was assembled in May 2020, quote, "We recognize that the structure of animation and governance of the Institute must generate co-responsibility, sustainability, transparency, and solidarity to ensure the life and mission of the Lasallian family throughout the world." So again, allow me to pause for a moment to decrease and allow your thoughts. So again, I ask you, sisters and brothers, what do you hear? What do you see? In my time since yesterday evening and across parts of the day, I hear people talking about your structures. So what are you hearing? What are you seeing? A question was asked to Brother Paul about the movement of the congregation between now and 2028. And I heard him say that it is on the provincial levels, within the provinces, that a lot of this work is going to get done. So I guess one of the questions to be asking yourselves, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear? What are the type of structures that you believe will be helpful for the mission of Holy Cross, to put structures in a Holy Cross key, if you will? So take a moment again to think, to meditate on that broad question. What do you hear? What do you see? Again, I can say more about those structures, but I'd like to leave that to our larger period of Q&A. Okay? So let's go to movement 3. To begin, I have a disclaimer, which perhaps I should have said at the beginning. I am not enamored of the term co-responsibility. It's not that the term lacks a descriptive element, but rather it is just not theologically thick and pastorally inspiring. Though solidarity isn't an equivalent term for what is meant by co-responsibility, it's more meaningful, solidarity. It captures the tone and tenor of what we are attempting to build both within the Lasallian world and the Holy Cross world, and that is to build as a consciousness, sharing God's mission within charisms and co-creating a living heritage. You heard Brother Paul talk about the Holy Cross legacy. That said, association is the Lasallian term, is the Lasallian concept, which historically and practically connote co-responsibility. As our brothers' rules state, the Lasallian charism is a gift of the Holy Spirit given to the church. The brothers joyfully share the same mission together with their partners who recognize and live the Lasallian charism. Is there a concept or term resident in the Holy Cross charismatic family that expresses co-responsibility considering your charism and your heritage? Is there a term? Is there a concept that connotes for you, because of your lived reality and your heritage, that better connotes this consciousness of responsibility, of building God's mission? To begin to close in this third movement, Don Sr. observes, leadership at all levels is to be exercised with generosity and with a sense of deep respect for the gift of others. A leadership that encourages each member of the community to use their gifts for the well-being of all. Reading from Paul's letter to the Christians in Galatia, we hear a summons to discipleship for the reign of God. So let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all. Paul is helping us hear a summons to discipleship. When we hear about the future, when we contemplate the future is now. Or could I say the futures is blossoming now. But I want to end before we go into the space of Q&A. And this is both a challenge and an opportunity if I have permission. Because I make this contention within our own charismatic family as well. Shared mission, co-responsibility, association, it connotes that we are in partnership, consecrated religious, brothers, sisters, priests, with our partners. And so when we listen to the Apostle Paul, my sisters and brothers, there is also inherent in the call to discipleship of a call to inviting young men and women into consecrated life. The question that I send to you, that I share with you, can the heritage, can the mission survive, indeed thrive, in the absence of shared responsibility for the mission and heritage of the consecrated persons and partners together? I will leave that as an open question. And I want to invite conversation about it. Because in my own mind, I am torn. And one of our more learned brothers, who once was in Brother Paul's role as vicar general, once said that after a generation of us are gone, can the mission and the heritage survive, indeed thrive, thereafter? And so we listen to Paul's words. We listen to Paul's summons, a call to discipleship. And so let us pause once again, and then we're going to open up the floor for some conversation, and indeed for debate, if you will. And indeed, if I said something, I invite your pushback. So before we open up the doors of the church, let us just once again quiet our minds and ask ourselves, what have you heard and what have you seen? So take a moment, and then we're going to open up the doors. And as you meditate for a moment, I should tell you what we're looking at. We're looking at all the delegates of our recent IMEL, the International Mission Assembly. And here is a great hodgepodge of Lasallian educators, of brothers and Lasallian partners from around the world at the front entrance of the main building at our generalate in Rome. And if I may. So let us open up the doors of the church. We have good time. And so perhaps we should see this time as an opportunity to share our thoughts, to share your thoughts about this whole issue of co-responsibility. What do you want to see for the futures of Holy Cross? How do we preserve the mission? How do we continue to find the right structures and a Holy Cross key in order for the Holy Cross mission, which is God's mission, for the reign of God to thrive?